Just a few announcements this evening. Reminder to continue to wear your masks and socially distance. We will again take public comment from those present here in person and from those on the Zoom. There was an executive session this evening prior to meeting regarding personnel. And do we have any announcements from our student reps? From Ishika, it's here, and I believe Allison is on the Zoom, correct?
There are no announcements this evening.
Okay, thank you. Public to be heard on agenda items only. Anyone in person? Anyone on the Zoom?
At this time, there were no hands raised.
Okay, then we'll move right into presentations this evening, and we're going to start with Dr. Collier, who's going to present a number of items to us on the agenda from letters A through I, excluding B and C until May. Dr. Collier.
Good evening. Thank you. We are fortunate to be able to spend a few minutes to recognize some of the accomplishments of some of our winter athletic teams, grades 7 through 12. So we'll let the first team make their way in here before we get started. Parents, if you wanted to stand up, any of the 7th grade basketball parents, if you wanted to kind of stand up over there, feel free to take some pictures. Just a minute here. So we have the opportunity again to recognize some of our winter athletic teams. And the first team that we want to recognize at this time for an undefeated season under the direction of head coach Kaylee Wallace is our 7th grade girls blue basketball team. Congratulations, ladies.
Can we bring them into the middle? Can we bring them into the middle here so that the parents don't have to try to, well, they're all over there now, but can we, moving forward, bring them to the middle here if it's okay?
I'll double check with Mr. Rothermel. We had them set up over there so that we could get them on camera for everybody watching from home, but I'll touch base with him right now.
Congratulations to all of you.
Parents, you all set? Yep. All right, ladies. Come on, step up this way. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Hold them up, hold them up. Okay. We're going to do it differently. Yep, stand right in the middle. Yep. The next team we wanted the opportunity to recognize is our high school wrestling team. So we are proud to be able to present a resolution commending the Springford High School wrestling team and their coaches, Coach Slislov, Coach Busa, Coach Landis, and Coach Kraus for winning the 2021 Pioneer Athletic Conference Wrestling Championship, the PIAA District 1 3A Championship, the PIAA District 1 3A Team Duels Championship, and the PIAA Southeast Regional Championship, 6th place in the PIAA State Individual Team Championship, and 3rd place in the PIAA 3A State Team Dual Championships. An outstandingly successful season by our wrestling team and all the coaches. Congratulations, wrestlers. In addition to an outstanding team season, we did also want to have the opportunity to recognize 4 specific wrestlers for their achievements this year. So I'll ask 4 of our wrestlers to stand forward. Joey Milano, Jack McGill, Dominic Ortlip, and Cole Smith, please step forward. Yeah, sure. Congratulations to Joey Milano for winning the PIAA District 1 South 182-pound weight class wrestling championship, winning the PIAA Southeast Regional Championship, winning the PIAA Super Regional Championship, and winning the first Springford PIAA State Wrestling Championship in school history. Congratulations. Congratulations to Jack McGill for winning the PIAA District 1 South 160-pound weight class wrestling championship, winning the PIAA Southeast Regional Championship, qualifying and placing second in the PIAA Super Regional Tournament, and qualifying and placing second in the PIAA State Tournament. Congratulations to Dominic Ortlip for winning the PIAA District 1 South 113-pound weight class wrestling championship and qualifying for the PIAA Southeast Regional Tournament. And congratulations to Cole Smith for winning the PIAA District 1 South 106-pound weight class wrestling championship, winning the PIAA Southeast Regional Championship, and qualifying for the PIAA Super Regional Tournament. Again, congratulations to the entire wrestling team and all the coaches for an outstanding season. Congratulations. Hang on. I'm going to give this all to coach. Oh, yes. Thank you. That's an individual one from the team. Okay? Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. We will also recognize our girls basketball, high school basketball team in just a minute. They'll make their way in at this time. Another resolution goes to our high school girls basketball team. Special congratulations to the Springford High School girls basketball team and their coaches, Coach McDaniel, Coach Brittingham, Coach Labick, Coach Moley, and Coach Roach for winning the 2021 Pioneer Athletic Conference Girls Basketball Championship, PIAA District 1 6A Championship, and second place in the PIAA 6A State Championship. Congratulations, ladies. For 1 second. I just, in terms of all of our winter sports, we're very proud of all the accomplishments of all of our student athletes this winter and the tremendous effort above and beyond what happens on the court or on the wrestling mat or in the pool in regards to all the other regulations that had to be balanced and managed. Quite an effort all around, and I congratulate all the student athletes for a great season. So congratulations again, ladies.
Thank you, Dr. Collier, and thank you to all of our athletes, and congratulations to our athletes, their coaches, their families, and their fans for a season well played. Thank you so much. Any other comments from the board on all of those accomplishments? All right, and with that then, we'll move on to Dr. Murray to give us a presentation this evening, an update on the Summer Rams program.
Hi, good evening. This presentation certainly isn't as exciting as our student accomplishments, but we are excited to be sharing this program with you tonight. So this program was presented in curriculum committee last month with the idea of really supporting, being able to support our students as they're moving into the summer. We know that this year has been challenging in very many different ways and different ways for different families. So one of the things that we wanted to look at is how we can provide some academic support for our youngest students, K to 8, in the areas of reading and math as they move into the summer for families who choose to do so. So this program is an optional program for families. It will be offered at no cost to families covered through our ESSER funding. And it is designed with busy summer schedules in mind, knowing that our families have a lot of things going on. Many of our families we know need a break. I'm a mom of 2 young kids, and I know they need that break too during the summer. So we try to build a program that is flexible, but that offers maybe something for everyone if they so choose to do so. So we are offering, we're hoping to offer 3 programs this summer. The Summer RAMS program stands for Reading and Math Success. So we're looking at offering 3 options. One is a fully asynchronous option, one is a virtual option, and one is an in-person option. I'm going to start with the virtual and in-person options. Again, the goal of this is to provide targeted interventions for our students in the areas of math and reading. It is not an acceleration program, and it is also designed to strengthen the skills for students in the areas of reading and math and to help address those learning gaps that may or may not be a concern for some of our families. We know that this is a nationwide concern, learning gaps that may have developed over the year as a result of COVID. So this is a program to address that, and we are going to be really emphasizing the fact that this program is to address those concerns. It is not an acceleration program, and we're really asking for support from our families to help just understand the purpose of our program in doing so. Again, the focus will be on ELA and math. And I will share here too, as we're planning and rolling this out, a lot of this will be pending on staffing. That, to be completely honest and transparent, will be the #1 challenge that we're going to face. And it really the largest obstacle in making sure that we can adequately staff the program the way we would like to. So we have already started that process, but we are being realistic with the fact that that may be one of the limiting factors. Our teachers have done an absolutely phenomenal job this year. They have worked really, really hard to provide quality experiences for our students, and we know that they also need a break. So part of that flexibility that we have in the program is to be able to get as much staff as possible and work with their flexible schedules as well. So the virtual option, each of these options are divided up into 2-week increments. Again, to enhance the flexibility so that our families can choose the options that work best for them. It is designed so that families can choose among 3 different 2-week sessions. And we're going to use data from a program called iReady, which will help us provide specific targeted needs for students in the areas of reading and math. It is designed to be a half-day program, and our intention is to offer it in the morning and the afternoon. Families may also receive a home kit with this program as well, which may include instructional resources such as leveled readers or anchor text. Some of that will be dependent on the grade level. You can see here there's a sample schedule for a virtual option, but it's looking at starting about 7:45 and going to 11:15. And again, it would be targeted in reading or math. We are also hoping to offer a virtual pre-algebra program. This would be an option for any student who would be enrolling in Algebra 1 for the 2021-22 school year. So as the virtual program I just mentioned is really designed for those who might need some remediation and some stronger focus on some of the learning gaps. This is really designed for any student who would be enrolling in Algebra 1 next year. We know that Algebra 1 is a gateway course. We know that Algebra 1 success directly links to student success in high school as well. So we want to really prioritize this course and offer a virtual pre-algebra course for any student who is entering Algebra 1 next school year. And the idea again that this would be offered 3 times in 2-week sessions. Again, this would be pending staff. My next step would be to make sure I can secure the staff and offer only what we want, what we're able to adequately staff. Now moving into our in-person option. Our in-person option is similar to our virtual option in that it would be running again in those 3-week increments, or those 2-week increments rather, 3 times throughout the summer. Again, it's flexible for our students so that it meets the busy schedules of our families. We would continue to use the iReady data to help support instruction, and it is a half-a-day program. The difference with this is that we will have math and reading at the same time for this intervention program as well. As always, we would follow all current safety precautions and follow the mandatory mask as well. And you'll see a sample schedule here as well. Here's just a quick snapshot of what the schedule would look like. You'll see the session 1 would run June 28th through July 8th. The session 2 would run July 12th through July 22nd, and session 3 would run July 26th through August 5th. The idea is that families would, once again, be able to select the session, whether it's in person, or virtual, that works best for them, that run throughout this time frame. The final option that we have too is to offer an asynchronous option. Each student would receive a prescriptive pathway based on their needs in math and reading, and this could be done at any time throughout the summer. It would be available from the minute they complete the diagnostic assessment until the end of the summer. Students would receive both instruction and practice via a digital platform using iReady, and as I mentioned, they would have access to that digital platform until August 27th rather. They would have access to the platform 24/7, so they can choose a time that works best for them. The nice thing about this program is that all students, whether or not they're asynchronous, whether or not they're fully virtual, or they're choosing the virtual option, or they're choosing the in-person option, would have access to this program as well. So what are our next steps when a family is interested? The first step will be, once we receive hopefully approval tonight, we're gonna be hitting the ground. In fact, I already have a training set up so that we can start to get what's called the diagnostic assessment off the ground. The first step would be to complete the iReady diagnostic assessment or placement assessment. Now, I wanna stress something that's really important about this assessment, is that it is a low stakes assessment. In a minute, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. But we are working on some communication for families on how to start that. There will be instructional videos as well as how to do both the math and or reading, again, depending on what the families choose. And they would complete the assessment on their own at home, and the results will be shared with their families. So an important note about the diagnostic or placement assessment. I think that term sounds pretty hefty, a diagnostic assessment. And really what this is, we're choosing the iReady program because it's not an assessment that we currently use within our program. This is a low stakes assessment, and what I mean by that is that it's designed for learning. It's designed for students to understand what their instructional needs are and how to best address those instructional needs. So this data is only used to help develop an instructional plan for the students. It is not something that is going to be used. In fact, right now, our teachers aren't even going to see the data because it is new data for us, and it really will be used just for the summer for them to be able to understand and develop a learning path. So the assessment is adaptive, and what that means is that it gets harder when students demonstrate their need, and it's designed to understand a student's needs. So at some point, a student will cap out and not be able to progress in the assessment because they've reached their learning target there. And that's how the program then designs an instructional path that's best for students. What's nice about this is that the student who wants some enrichment over the summer and wants to go further will have that opportunity. The student who might need some remediation will also have that opportunity as well because it is adaptive. One of the things that we're going to stress in the video for families is that we're going to really ask to help prompt with procedures, not with content. The program is only as accurate as the data that is input within the program. So we want students to reach that productive struggle with the assessment so that the program can then adapt to where the students are and develop an appropriate learning plan for them. So we are gonna, as part of the video, roll out to families, talk about this, talk about how they can prompt for the content so that they are not leading to frustration later for students when they are getting content that's too difficult for them. So after students take the assessment, they won't immediately receive the report, but we will be sending out the report. This is one of the details we have to work out and how this is going to be delivered. But there's a report called Fourth Families, and this is designed to explain the results of the assessment, explain what the data means and how to read it. This will then prompt students, once they get the report, If they choose, they can look into either the virtual options or the in-person options. And this is a great way then for them to have a little bit of data so that families can make that decision whether or not they want to enroll their children. Once they complete that diagnostic assessment, they will have immediate access to the asynchronous platform as well, so they can get started on that right away and then choose a little bit later on if they wanted to enroll in one of the virtual or in-person sessions. So with that, that brings us to the overall program. Are there any questions?
Kelly, great presentation. And that's when we went through this at the curriculum, I thought it was so important to bring it to the board this evening. And I don't know, I didn't realize we actually need to give approval on this, but I'm fully behind this 150%. Couple questions. One is that, and we talked about this at curriculum, and I don't know if you made any headway of making sure that we're able to get this out to all families, not, just make sure that the message is, K through 8, because this has been a focus K through 8.
Absolutely. So we developed kind of a plan moving forward. So once hopefully we get board approval tonight, our next step will be to get our instructional videos out for how to complete the assessment. And we are also working on flyers and communication so that that message can go out to all of our families. We are also going to have a process where we are going to share this with our teachers, make sure our teachers are aware of the program so that they can also encourage students to apply that they might see have a need as well. So our goal is to really focus on the communication from this point forward. We did send out an interest survey about a month and a half ago. That interest survey was purely just to gather data, and it was not binding. It wasn't enrollment or anything. It was just to make sure that it was more so for me as I planned, I wanted to make sure I'm developing a program that's responsive to the community needs. So while we had about 907 families respond to that, and I think it represented about 1,270 families, or I'm sorry, individual students, we know that this doesn't reflect all of our students, but because it was just a general interest survey, it gave us data with how to plan the program. So the good thing is I think that information that we gathered is generalizable enough for us to be able to plan the program. But at this point, we're offering a virtual option. So if a family wants that, they have that opportunity. If a family wants in person, they have that choice. If they want to work asynchronously, they have that as well.
I just want to make sure that we're using other means to communicate with families than just through, through electronic communication.
The next step for us is really going to be publicizing the program. We didn't want to publicize it until we had board approval. So there is a motion tonight to cover approval, and we're going to hit the ground running even tomorrow starting that. But our next big step with families is going to be publicizing it and making sure the word is out and they know how to register and what to do to register that. So we have the right students who are really interested and have that need.
Right. And then another question is that how we doing with staffing?
So we've already posted that as pending so that we can try and collect as much staffing as possible. My goal is to only offer what I can adequately staff. Being completely transparent, I feel like this is going to be my #1 limiting factor as to how many sessions we can offer. So my goal is to try and secure staffing at next board meeting, bring a motion to you for approval of all of that staffing, at which case I can then give you the exact details as to how many sessions we're going to run. But we've already opened that as an anticipated position so that we can start gathering that now and bring that to you next month.
Right. And I two last points. One is that it's our understanding that, and Mr. Fink is here, it's our understanding that we can put this in as reimbursement through the covert relief money. And he's giving me the thumbs up. I believe that was the thumbs up. So that would be money that would be coming from the federal government. And the last thing is I just want to make sure that we take into consideration that part of the concerns with learning loss is associated to virtual or asynchronous learning. So how successful will we be with addressing that learning loss if we continue with asynchronous or virtual lessons? I mean, I want to make sure that we're figuring out how we're going to progress, because that's the reason we're doing this. is because students were either virtual or asynchronous.
Sure, and that was some of the feedback that I did get from the families, is that they felt that the virtual learning led to this. They weren't apt to sign up for a virtual option again for the learning loss. So I think having that in-person option is going to be really helpful. I'm also hoping that maybe the families who are a little bit reserved in returning right now, this might be a good gateway for the summer for them to come in, get reacclimated to the building, especially with younger kiddos. Sometimes it's easier for them to get back in the building when it's a little bit quieter. I'm hoping that that might also help encourage that as well. But I'm hoping that by having the three options, that families will find something that meets their needs best. Again, I wish I could make this program as large as I possibly can, but I know that it's going to be difficult to staff to the large degree that I would love to make this program.
Right, and sorry, last question, how are we going to gauge success?
So in part, the data that's going to be through iReady. What's nice about the data is that all students will then be using that, so we can get an idea as to where they are, and that within the program, the in-person, the virtual teachers will then be assigned their roster with specific needs for their students. So that will then, some of our teachers will be working with students that they only have for 2 weeks and don't know very well. So the iReady program will give them those specific needs so that the teachers then can provide targeted interventions while in the class, and they can then measure that within the class. Now, I will say we're not necessarily doing formal assessments, but we will have the iReady program until the end of the summer, and we can also track their progress within the program.
Yeah, I just think it's a great program. I also just want to encourage board members to realize too that this is a really good use of that funding. And COVID funding is difficult to use. I mean, you have to meet a lot of criteria. And so to create something like this that's so comprehensive, and I also think that Dr. Murray did a very good job of using the data in a very thoughtful and valuable way to create a flexible summer program to address specifically what the community wanted. A lot of them did not want to come in person, and so because of the summer, and they wanted to give their kids a break, and so she provided options for all three ways, which was really useful. So I just wanted to say that, and a great presentation also.
Thank you.
So I got a lot out of that presentation the first time you did it in curriculum, but even more tonight. And I also recently had a school board president's meeting, and there was a lot of chatter on there about some of the other districts doing some programs over the summer to address learning loss. So of course, this was pretty fresh in my mind. And all of them echoed the same concern that you have, Dr. Murray, about staffing. So I know you are not at the point yet where you have secured that, but is there interest being generated among the faculty that you think that there's a positive response out there so far? Are they in favor of this? What is the general feel?
Great question. So before I presented to the curriculum committee, I did do a brief survey with staff as well to gauge interest, because I didn't want to bring something to you that was completely, not something that I can make work out. So I did have some initial interest generated there. Now that applications are out and the dates are settled and everyone can see that, I have seen some decrease from the initial response I received, but I am still getting a very nice response. I'm working on patching it together to see where my holes are, and then I'm gonna kind of hit the ground and start maybe tapping some on the shoulders, maybe doing some gentle encouraging if I can, but I also want to respect the fact that I know our teachers have worked tirelessly, so I don't want to push too much, but I think I have some good interest. But it is still a concern of mine, because I don't think, as I have it written right now, I don't have enough staffing for the program as it's written now. So I will, again, only offer the amount of sessions that I can staff. So I'm hoping to still increase that over the next week or two.
I think the other thing too that I recall from, maybe there was a little more emphasis on it from what I recall from before, was that with the 2-week sessions, teachers don't need to sign up for the whole thing. There is some flexibility in there. You could do 2 weeks, you could go away or enjoy the rest of your summer, but maybe only do 1 2-week session. So
Correct.
are you highlighting that and putting some emphasis on that as well?
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we broke it up into 2-week sessions, not only for families and students, but also for our staff. Like you said, it would be difficult to probably get a commitment for the entire summer. So we are emphasizing that, trying to, again, see which interest we get and see where we are first as far as holes within the schedule. and then trying to hit the ground and fill some of that piece. But that is one of the benefits to why we broke it up into 2-week increments so that we could try and reach a larger population of teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Murray, thank you very much for such a well-prepared presentation and for presenting to our students and their families a very comprehensive program that takes in everything into account for our students. As you know, the learning loss, this learning gap, is not just something for Springford, it is something that our entire society is looking at. What you're addressing here is, I hope, phase one of a longer term goal to get our students back where they need to be for graduating from high school and to be prepared to go off. Reading on level, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know already, we need our students reading on grade level by 3rd grade. Otherwise, their chances of graduating from high school decreases significantly, according to the studies. Math by 7th grade, so that they can enter into the algebra programs and things, into the high school, the secondary math, prepared to be successful. So what you are presenting, we have an obligation to present. You know, we have an obligation to our community. This is why the federal funding is available for us to do this. But you're also providing an opportunity for this learning. So I hope that our families take advantage of this, that they understand that this isn't like extra, busy work or, punitive because we didn't get the days in the way they should have, we had hoped they'd be throughout the school year, that this is a really great opportunity for their child to gain this knowledge. And it's targeted. That's the beauty of it. I appreciate the teachers have given of their time this year. And I think also, Colleen had said too, that, we want to do everything that we can to recognize them and to help them to be a part of it because they know our students best. So I look forward to hearing the gains that are made and that hopefully like a phase 2 to continue this kind of program for our students. And anything that, we can do for you as a board, I think we're all in agreement. We support that. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I do feel so fortunate to have not only staff who is really committed, but also to have the board really support a project like this, because truthfully, it's not something we're required to do, but it's something that I think is helpful, and it's nice to have the flexibility in our family choice. But I do feel very fortunate to have such a supportive board and really seeing the value for that. So thank you so much for that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Murray. If there are no other questions or comments there, we will move on to board and committee reports. Ishika, do you have a student report for us this evening?
Yes, we do. Can we get it on? All right, so this is Allie and I's April student report. I think Allie is going to do the what happened.
Press the green button to advance the slides.
All right, thank you.
So spring break was from March 31st to April 5th for all students. Spring photos at Royersford Elementary School were held April 7th. A drive-in movie night was held at Upper Providence Elementary School on April 9th. The 3rd marking period ended April 13th, and the 4th marking period began April 14th. This Senior National Honor Society induction ceremony was held on April 14th, and the Junior National Honor Society induction ceremony was held on April 15th. ACT testing was administered on April 17th. Spirit Week at Springford High School was held from April 19th to April 23rd. And a junior and senior powder puff event was held on April 23rd.
We do have some pictures from the powder puff event and the pep rally. It's right here. It was a great event, great turnout. And then what is coming up? So we have a bunch of fun things happening for the end of the year. We have our senior decision day, which is this Wednesday on April 28th. The last day to buy a yearbook at Limerick Elementary is April 30th. AP exams will be administered from May 3rd to May 21st. Impact awards are May 5th. We have our spring play on May 7th and May 8th. A senior event for the senior extravaganza, which is May 15th. There's no school for students. It is an in-service day on May 18th. We have the senior academic award banquet on May 20th. Keystones will be administered from May 20th to May 25th. We have a movie night for the high school on May 21st. The music department is hosting a spring spectacular on May 22nd. We have a senior commencement / scholarship award night on May 27th. And then lastly, we have no school, which is Memorial Day on May 31st.
Okay, that's a great recap of what's going on, what has taken place very recently, and what's coming down the pike. So thank you for that. Mr. DeBello, do you have a report for us on the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee met Tuesday, April 13th at the high school conference room. So as always, we started off with going through the executive, what we call executive reports, which brought us through March 31st. From a liquidity standpoint, we are basically where we should be, just under about $88 million, which is about $1 million up from last year. Our revenues are on target and coming in. Some are a little bit slower. We did finally receive the Exelon check, which was good. But our interest and delinquent tax is lower than budgeted. State sources is coming in slower than the past, has been a situation all year. We did receive $400,000 from the County CARES Act, and the federal sources are due to, up due to the federal grants. So in other words, as the federal money becomes available and approved, that we are getting it sent to the district. So overall, from an expenditure standpoint, and we've talked about this a few times in the previous meetings, salaries are up due to the Springford Cyber School. Property services continue to be under budget due to not having full interstate cleaning staff on site at the beginning of the fiscal year. Other services are up, seeing transportation savings, approximately about $450,000, but is offset by the external charter school costs, which is up over $615,000 from the previous year. Supply costs are up due to COVID expenditures. Property expenses are up due to COVID-related expenditures, about $350,000. And we are about $125,000 under budget in other objects, mainly due to conference costs, which have not occurred as much during the pandemic. Assessments gained another $4.9 million. Where our goal is to see basically 19 million. We feel that we might fall slightly short of the 4.146 billion assessment, but it should be made up in the interim, hopefully with interim assessments. Real estate transfer taxes are up. Are off pace from about 275,000 year to date from the prior year, but still are on par to make or exceed the budgeted amount. Springford still is considered one of the hottest selling real estates. People want to come to Springford because it's a great school district. So we continue to watch and stay on top of that. Earned income tax is doing very well as well. Also approximately $400,000 ahead of prior year. And we're on pace to bring in somewhere around 11.3 to 11.5 million in earned income taxes. Which, what does that tell us? It tells us that we didn't, although there were many people impacted by COVID, for some reason in this area, the impact wasn't as bad as other areas, which, you know, is a good thing for the people that weren't impacted, but still very, very unfortunate for the people that were. Self-funded health insurance is on target. Food services, we are operating in the black. Year to date, we served about 360,000 meals versus the 358,000 in the prior year. cart sales are way down from the prior year, but are improving as the students are back in school, and we are providing more options as time goes on. We are, if the board remembers, when we started this change over at Aramark, we were looking at providing breakfast options. One of the things that we hope to introduce next year is have the hot sandwich cart or carts that would be available in the high traffic areas, mainly where the bus drop-offs are and all that. So students that are coming in have an opportunity to grab something, a hot sandwich, as they make their way to their first class. High school expansion project. A couple small invoices that came in, but nothing, no real major changes. At this point, I would suspect probably by May, we're going to close out the budget completely. And the unspent funds, we will recommend that we move back in the cap reserve where they came from originally. We did review the COVID-19 related expenditures. Currently, we received 1.3 million of the 2.8 million approved by that we're expecting. The Chromebooks that we were so anxiously awaiting have been arrived, but we haven't been invoiced yet. The additional cleaning dollars have not hit our budget limits, therefore this line item has not been tapped. So 1.4, so we spent basically 1.4 million of the 2.1 million in the budget. Getting on to the actual budget for next year. We were currently at a 3.5% tax difference. Last meeting, last month, I asked the board where they want us to go from a finance perspective. The board agreed to get us to 3.0%. So what was reported that, as you know, of course, everything is in the budget is necessary for normal operations. Believe it or not, there is no wasteful spending in the district, although we always try to move in that, make those claims. But to get to the 3.0%, where the recommendation is we're going to defer 2 new hires, which were marked as number 2 in a priority, and that's basically about $211,000. The goal is to, we will remove them from this year's budget, but they definitely will be moved or put back into the budget for the 22-23 school year. So it's felt that we could get through this this upcoming school year by passing those 2 new hires. I'm sorry, we're deferring new hires that were marked number 2 priority. So then we also looked at the Springford Cyber Learning Program includes labor for 4 new dedicated teachers. As budgeting strategies, these can be covered by the ESSAR funding until September of 2023, which will be $340,000 for 1 year. Basically, what I brought this up, I stated when the funds expire, we will need to work these positions into the normal operating budget. If the cyber enrollment numbers decrease, teachers will need to be factored back into the classroom as students move back. So we agreed to move in this direction and fund for 2-3 years for less of a budget impact. So in other words, we're going to spread that out. And it was also brought up by Mr. Jackson. He was concerned that once we add these positions of support, it's hard to basically to cease their position or eliminate their position. But when we look at our, retiring and everything else and the number of teachers that either retire or move on to other endeavors, these additional positions, if necessary, can be absorbed through natural attrition as well. So with all those changes, we were able to bring the budget overall impact down to 3%. Now, as Ms. Wright brought up earlier, as part of the phase 2 of the learning loss and the concerns with social, emotional, mental issues that might arise from this COVID virtual shutdowns. Those positions that were presented by Mr. Rizzo, I believe at the last meeting, I think there was several positions that were listed, but we did ask at some point for that list to be refined. We still believe that those numbers, those positions won't be part of the actual budget for next school year because those monies can come for the next 3 years. We can get those through the stimulus package money that will pay for those positions. And we could evaluate each year if those services are continuing to be needed or not. We did talk about the tax rebate program, and we did find out that even though we put that in place last year, there was no one involved and no one participated. And I think a main concern of that is that we did not do a decent job of getting and communicating that out to the community. I recommended that during that meeting that we work with the tax collectors when those tax bills go out, and we as a school district have an envelope stuffer as well that has something in the tax bill that explains the tax rebate program to our seniors. There, of course, would be a cost associated with us providing that to go out in the tax collector's envelopes, but I think it's well worth it to make sure we get that properly communicated into our community. We also are looking at renewing the Aramark contract. Although we are in a 5-year agreement, each year we have to just go through, because of what the state requires, we have to go through this annual process. We are in a third year of the 5-year agreement. And we also are in the process of starting and working with Custer's for renewal of the contract for transportation costs as well. And that was the end of the meeting.
Any questions from Mr. DeBello? Okay,
Just a quick comment. Besides, Tom, your soothing voice, so enjoyable. How much do you think it would cost us to make sure that we adequately, or at least try to get the word out in terms of, like you said, like you meant like an envelope stuffer? So we're just talking about like printing and dropping it off at the tax collectors type of thing, or is there other expenses you anticipate?
I'm not sure the process from a tax collector standpoint of how the stuffing occurs in the envelopes. So with the bills, that I don't know if I guess they probably outsource, and maybe Mr. Fink knows that, but they probably outsource that service. So what we need to do is have whatever we want to put in, write up, clearly given, detailed information, probably print it here or whatever, and get it to whatever service they use. And I mean, I couldn't imagine it be, more than a couple $100. I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating, but I couldn't imagine it being all that, probably less than $1,000.
All right, thank you. And it was just because I think we should do whatever, I don't want this to just slip by. We should do whatever we can to make sure it's communicated, because there's a lot of residents probably aren't aware of that, and we should help them out.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Jackson, property?
Good afternoon, all. The most important committee in the district is property. Meeting was held on April 13th. Some of the ongoing business, I'm trying to keep this high level. I've been asked to try to simplify it, and I'm going to try to do that. For the BARD building update, there were 3 options where we had some foundation issues. The first option was to short a concrete deck with posts and wood cribbing foundation. And the second option was to install the shoring deck with posts on concrete foundations. The board's recommendation is to go to option 2, which is the shoring concrete deck with posts. And that's on the agenda for approval. McNally Stadium update occupancy. The board had approved $100,000. The numbers came in close to $350,000. So the board made a financial decision to put this out to public bid to try and see if we can get that number much lower. So the intent is to have the recommendations or the redesign implemented prior to the start of the 21-22 school year. The Gotcha Farmhouse rental property, there were 3 options regarding this property. One was to repair the costs required for the property and get a tenant. Option 2 was demolition of the structure. Option 3 was make the repairs to the property, subdivide and sell. After much debate at the meeting, the committee recommended that the subdivision and sale of the property be put forth, and that's an item on the agenda for approval by the board. Under new business, there are several capital projects. One is at Limerick Elementary, is the installation, the replacement of boilers and associated equipment through CoStars, with the BMS system being provided by Johnson Controls. That item is on the board for approval. Capital project at the 9th grade center was the installation of phase 1 of 4 for a flat roof replacement through Keystone Purchasing Network with a firm by the name of Waterproofing Technologies. That item is on the agenda for approval. Under school police and emergency management services, Chief and his folk, are delivering and restocking PPE for each school. They're coordinating with the administrators for their projections for the 21-22 school year. Those costs will be covered by grants. Under grants, to date, the Safety and Security has successfully submitted for grants and been awarded $1.19 million. This could not be accomplished without the help of the Finance Department, especially Mrs. David Hauser and Mary Newitt. The only other item is Lieutenant Gwen Phillips will be attending the prestigious FBI Command Leadership Institute this week. Lieutenant Phillips has completed the Supervisor Leadership Institute and will complete the Executive Leadership Institute through the FBI. And that is my update.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Jackson? Great, thank you for that. Mrs. Earl, policy update?
Yeah, the policy committee met on April 19th, and you'll see on tonight's agenda 12 policies for final board approval. We also put forward 13 more policies for a first read, which I'm sure you'll enjoy that. There are 10 policies we've gotten from PSBA that we're reviewing currently, 2 of which will be retired because they're redundant under current policies. And there are 2 new policies. One is for trauma-informed approach, the other for diabetes management. Both of these, we went over them in the meeting, but we're forwarding them to the next committee meeting because Dr. Rizzo is going to help us pull together committees and say of experts and professional people. The diabetes management, we certainly want the nursing directors involved in that. And for the trauma-informed approach, psychologists and nurses and security and everybody. So there's that, they'll probably, at least that one in particular, will probably be slugging through the summer and won't have any final results on probably either of them till sometime in the fall. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Earl. Are there any questions or comments? Excuse me. Okay, Mr. Schaefer, extracurricular.
Thank you. So the extracurricular committee met Monday, April 19th, and we received an athletic update and we also received an activity update. I would like to highlight some of our middle school engagement numbers for the board's benefit and the community. And I'll do this as quickly as possible. So for the, and this is the middle school sports. So we had 69 for baseball tryout, and there were cuts. We are fielding 3 teams, 1 in the 8th grade level and 2 in the 7th grade. Girls lacrosse, 41 tried out. There were no cuts. Boys lacrosse, 7th and 8th grade, 40 tried out. There were no cuts at the 8th grade level. There were cuts made at the 7th grade level. Softball, 7th and 8th grade, 45 tried out. 8 were cut on the 8th grade team and 5 were cut on the 7th grade team. And for both boys and girls at the 7th and 8th grade team, well, we had 62 for the 8th grade and 53 for the 7th grade, and there were no cuts made. The numbers were generally down as reported by Mr. Syslov at the meeting, but that's similar to the other school systems within our league for obvious reasons because of the pandemic. At the high school level, obviously I don't need to go through. We celebrated our champions this past year, and it was an extraordinary year for many different reasons, including what our student athletes had accomplished. The spring sports are in full effect, and we have about 4 weeks of the season to go. And Mr. Rigner presented for the spring activities. Our student reps touched on a lot of those, so I won't repeat that. But I would like to note that certainly administration has taken a leadership role in terms of trying to get as many of our activities in person as possible, and including we're able to celebrate National Honor Society for both the seniors and the juniors. I think it was a week or so ago. And we have our Impact Awards. I just want to pause there because that's occurring in person on May the 5th. And that's an event, I think most families are familiar with that, where seniors have the opportunity to nominate an educator that made a difference in their life, hence the name. And we had over 100 educators were nominated. So this event's going to take place in both the gym and the cafeteria. And I just would like to acknowledge our administrative staff and many others for the creativity to make sure these things happen in person. They mentioned our spring play is happening in person, and that is Clue. I believe the time frame is May the 5th through the 8th, I believe. And then the last thing to report on is the senior event is May 15th, and the registration is open now and it closes by May the 3rd. And the committee ended at 8:25 p.m. And I believe our next meeting will be in June. Is that correct, Madam President?
We may get to that during board comment.
Can't wait.
I just want to add on there too that Decision Day is coming up this Wednesday, April 28th, to add to that list that Ishika provided us earlier and that you just shared with us too. So many of us senior parents are excited about that as well. So, and happy that, again, all of these things are happening in person. Are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Schaefer?
Just want to add one thing, Mr. Schaefer, just one clarification. The play is May 7th and 8th, Friday and Saturday, 7th and 8th.
Thank you very much. I want to make sure we get that correct.
Yep.
Okay, great. And Mrs. Melton, legislative?
I wasn't able to attend. Dr. Wright was there.
Thank you. Yes, I had the opportunity to attend my first Montgomery County School District Legislative Committee. They met the evening of Wednesday, April 21st. I did a lot of listening and learning, but basically the main topic of concern is presenting a unified messaging on charter reform. So, thank you.
Mr. Fitzgerald, that's been an ongoing topic we've discussed the last couple of times. Not to jump ahead, but if I could, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about this at the table ad nauseum, and that is we hear year after year reasonable proposals for charter reform, and nothing comes of it. If there's ever a year, it is this year. in part because there are districts across the state who literally are going broke because of cyber costs this year alone and expected ongoing cyber costs, that there has to be pressure at this point to address what is a crisis, frankly, in terms of funding.
And it isn't a matter of eliminating charters. It isn't a matter of not seeing them as having a place in our society. It's a matter of correcting the financial burden that it places on districts.
Okay, thank you both for that. Any other comments or questions there? Okay, then we'll go to Mr. Rizzo, who's going to do his acting superintendent report and also talk to us with some information from Trish Smith, our nurse, who couldn't join us this evening.
You got it. Just an update on the survey. We did send out a parent survey. It was out for 7 days. We sent it Monday, the 19th, and we closed it at midnight this past Sunday, yesterday. Just some information, respondents, it was pretty even distribution amongst all the groups, with early return in the first quarter, second quarter returned in person, third quarter returned in person, virtual, Springford, cyber. So we have a pretty good distribution amongst all of them. Again, 2,008 total responses out of a potential almost 8,000. So a little bit more than 25% participation. Just to give you a couple of highlights here. How comfortable would you be sending your child to in-person school 5 days per week next year? 96% said either very comfortable or I have some reservations. 4% said they were not comfortable. Next question, select the statements that most apply when thinking about returning to in-person learning for the 21-22 school year. And this was a select all that applies, so the percentages will not equal 100. 48.5% had zero concerns. 40% had concern regarding COVID-19 exposure. 12% had concerns about difficulty transitioning. Another 12% social anxiety, 11% potential for disruption in routine, 11% making new friends, and then 4.4% made up a bunch of others. You had an opportunity to put other, and there was a lot of 1 and 2 type comments there. When asked about their child's social emotional wellness in the virtual mode, they were broken up into 2 groups. One, the students that returned for the second marking period. The other group was those that returned in either the third or the fourth marking period or remained virtual all year. So the marking period 2 folks, 53.5% expressed concern about their child's social emotional wellness. 27.8% felt it was about the same, and 18.7% felt it was generally good. For the next group, the marking period 3, 4, or virtual group, 25.8% expressed some concern, 50% felt that it was generally good, and 23% felt it was generally about the same, which would make sense. If they stayed in the virtual model longer, then they would have felt more comfortable with their child's social emotional wellness. When it comes to academic performance, those in marking period who came back in marking period 2, it was a bell curve, pretty evenly distributed. 41% did not feel their child did well. 24% said they performed about the same. 34% said they did well. And then for those who returned marking period 3, 4, or remain virtual, 16% felt they had a negative impact. 16% felt it was about the same. And then about 67% said that it felt good. Now, my concern about that is our ability to accurately assess students and really understand where that learning was, because we had to adjust how we assess students. And again, limitations to this to the survey. We did not have time to disaggregate the data based on grade in each quarter choice. I can do that. I was not able to do that for tonight since I just got the data for the first time this morning, or at least the complete data. We had full virtual synchronous classes at the elementary and multiple learning environments at the secondary level. Hybrid was in effect quarter 2 for the secondary. So there were a lot of variables, so it's hard to disaggregate as well as I would like. Again, slightly more than 25% of our population completed the survey. And while it was not a perfect survey, we did glean what we needed to provide enhanced options for the 21-22 school year. Our goal was to get information from our families and use that to decide what we need to do to use our ESSER funds for the future to help. And we feel comfortable with the information that we gleaned. Just a reminder, as we get to, I believe it's page 10, item U of the agenda, which is the administration's recommendation. We are recommending 5 days per week of in-person instruction next year, K-12. We are recommending the Springford Cyber Learning be the virtual option or the cyber option, albeit enhanced. with the two caveats being, one, we'd like to have weekly touch points with students, whether that be office hours or content-specific seminars or something along those lines, leaving the teacher the option to best determine how to support their virtual students or their cyber students. And then for students that might be struggling in that environment, we'd like to layer in a homebound instruction type model, up to 5 hours per week for students that might be struggling, where they can meet in person or virtual based on family's level of comfort, to help support them one-on-one if possible. Our emergency instructional plan, and this would be due to a mandated closure, not necessarily by anything Springford would recommend. If there was a mandated closure in place, we assume that it would likely be a short-term solution. And if we were mandated to be fully closed, we would then say we would support a fully synchronous virtual instruction model. If limited enrollment, we would look at some form of hybrid instruction with 2 days in and 3 days of asynchronous, and we would go back to those blue and gold groups. So that takes us to the next part. And Mr. Jackson, you had stressed everything. So I'm bringing everything to you, knowing that we can't afford everything. So we're going to have to make some pretty strategic choices. So when I reached out to the people that could provide the information that really had the pulse on their districts, on their buildings, and their students, here's the recommendations that were received. 3 to 4 additional behavior specialists, 3 to 4 additional lakeside counselors, 3.5 school counselors, 5 to 6 school psychologists. And the purpose of the school psychologists will be, one, to add personnel, but also to add hours to our existing school psychologists. They get a certain number of summer hours, add a little more to help out with the evaluations. 2 social workers. We have 1, bumping that up to 2 or 3, with 3 being a recommendation. 5 to 6 emotional support teachers, 5 to 6 learning support teachers, 4 to 8 general education teachers, and for a couple of reasons. 1, to support an instructional support study hall. The other reason we possibly, if we have students that need to take some extra courses or need to go through and repeat courses, to help support those, because we have a finite number of sections we can offer. And again, we have to see student performance before we can make any determination on that. Tutoring program, which could be existing staff with extra hours or other staff. 5 to 6 instructional support team coordinators at the elementary level. We're going to see a lot of students' needs, and not necessarily related to IEPs. We're talking general education students that might need some extra supports. We would need that in place there. An instructional literacy coach. Long-term considerations would be a transition coordinator, 7th to 12th grade, a director of people personnel, special education supervisor, and this, like I said, this is the all-inclusive list. And then for technology, we are looking for possibly some document cameras, and I'm thinking 20% of the teacher population per building, so that we can hand those out as needed. 10% for freestanding cameras, and again, this is to help our teachers put videos online, help support creating modules, things like that, to help support our students. And then when I talk with Bob Catalano on devices for all students, so K to 12, a device in every student's hands, we would need 600 Chromebooks and 600 iPads. So that's the technology piece. So then what's next? First, this is our first best guess at this point. There's still work to be done. This is the list of what will be ideal for our students based on increased needs now and what is projected through interactions and experiences. We are going to have to go through an RFP process, and there are other hoops that are associated with the ESSER funds. I'm working with Jim Fink, because now that we have rough numbers, we can start to try and go through that process and put some exact numbers to that. We're going to need to make some very strategic decisions, given that we will likely not have enough funding for everything on the list. We understand this is a pie in the sky list. We're going to have to pull people together, make some very, very clear, very strategic decisions in terms of how we best support our students. Okay. I know that's a lot, so I have one more thing to say, and this is, we started this trend when I came on board here, and I want to keep it going. Retirements. First, Bob Sawinski in our technology department. He'll be retiring after being with Springford for 23 years. Ellen Lichetti, who has taught 1st, 2nd, and 5th grade, and she's currently a gifted teacher at Oaks and Upper Providence, and has been Springford Cyber this past year. She's been with Springford for 28 years. Jill Shaw taught kindergarten for most of her career and is currently a RamQuest teacher at Evans Elementary. She's been with Springford for 33 years. And lastly, we have Renee Wilgomas, has taught social studies at the 8th grade center and has been with Springford for 23 years. We thank them all for their service, and we wish them well in this next journey of their career. And that is my report. Yep, absolutely. And that's my report. Thank you.
Questions or comments for Mr. Rizzo?
Um,
Great report as always.
yeah, it's a great report.
You have to ask for it, Dr. Rizzo, you have to ask for it, and you've asked for it. And this board quite often says, we love the school district, we love the school district, we love the administration, we love the staff. So this is a time that we can show that love. So I appreciate you having to go back and make some strategic cuts, but let us know what you come back with.
Great extensive list, because you're right. We asked what is everything, and you came back with probably most of everything. But when you were going through the list, I guess I got just a little confused because there were things that sounded in there that could definitely be related to COVID. And there sounded like there was things in there that were not necessarily related to COVID, but areas that we could expand groups or whatever it may be. So I also recommend that when you're going through to separate them into two groups, COVID related and district expansion, district need. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. That's absolutely part of our strategic whittling down.
Yeah, because the COVID related, like we talked about the social emotional issues and all that, those contracted consulting services could be paid for the next few years, and hopefully we'll get over this, over this hump. And then, 3 years from now, the district can make determinations on, what we need to, but that would be where your second list kind of plays in.
Correct.
Right. So yeah, I would kind of separate the two into COVID and yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, great.
Just one last question, Mr. Rizzo, and this might be for Mr. Catalano out there. The 600 to 650 Chromebooks, this is outside of the most recent delivery? Jesus. Okay. All right.
Just to clarify, the 600 he just mentioned? Yes. Currently, we just purchased for 7th and 8th grade, which we just received. A couple months ago, we approved 5th and 6th grade. With the returning devices, we would give those to 4th grade. This would give us devices enough to give the 3rd graders as well. We'd have Chromebooks 1-to-1. Every child would have a device 3 to 12. And then we have enough iPads for K and 1, and then this would give us enough for grade 2. So every child would have a device in district.
So to make this purchase in order for next year, what would be the cutoff date? Ballpark.
The iPads we can get within 2 weeks. The Chromebooks, if we order them shortly, we should be able to get them mid-August.
Thank you.
I'll take this pause to add the next part that I forgot, and that is the nurse's report. Clearly not a nurse, and I know you'd rather hear from Trish than me, but you get me. 30 positive cases since the last report 2 weeks ago. 14 were potentially infectious and required contact tracing, which resulted in 99 school close contacts for quarantine. That's it. Just want to give you those quick numbers.
Thank you for
Just one quick question on the nurses. Maybe I've lost count. We're up to 18 or 19 total?
100? Oh, number of nurses, sorry. Okay, I thought you were going with close contacts that were quarantined. We are at, I believe the number is 18 at this point.
Thank you.
I'm looking back to Beth to give me a thumbs up. Yes, 18.
Okay, thank you for all of that detail.
You got
Are there
it.
any other comments or questions this evening for Mr. Rizzo, AKA Nurse Smith? No? Okay. All right. Well, then we will move on. Mr. Fitzgerald, do you have anything to add?
I do briefly. We heard this evening from Dr. Murray as relates to the summer program that's going to be offered. One thing that I think should at least be mentioned is that while PDE has not provided any guidance per se with regard to learning loss, one area upon which they provided some level of guidance was with regard to an issue described as COVID compensatory services, in particular for students under IDEA special education. Your supervisors of special education have been working for, frankly, months on that issue to address those needs. specific to individual students. So that's not something that is just popping up. That has been something that has been going on, frankly, since about October of this year. And I think that's worth pointing out.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay, with that.
Hang on a second. Sorry. Based on that, I brought up at the last meeting about the parent advisory. Did we make any progress on that?
Katie Davis volunteered to take lead on that, and we did. I believe she did reach out to the district you told me about, and they've been talking about that, and we're going to be putting something in place.
We get an update at the next board meeting?
Yes.
Of what that something is?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then one of the things that I've been kind of chewing on for the last couple of days is that, I've spent several years in dealing in corporate America with senior leadership and that, and I've learned that in times when you're dealing in very stressful times or very unprecedented times, you have leaders that step up and they do an amazing job. And what I've found is that when those leaders step up and do an amazing job, that really defines the person, who they are, and what they're capable of, and what kind of job they would do in non-precedent or, what I'll say unrealistic times is what we had to deal with from a COVID standpoint over this past year. Mr. Rizzo has stepped into, before stepping into the superintendent, whatever it's called, interim superintendent role, showed his leadership in jumping with both feet and working through these very difficult times, made as part of and has made many, many, many tough decisions. His presentations have been very detailed, very effective, and were spot on as far as identifying what the needs were of the district. And I could go on, but from my perspective and knowing and seeing what's going on in Montgomery County with a lot of changes that are going on in school districts, my recommendation, or I'd actually like to make a motion that we proceed forward and moving Mr. Rizzo from the interim superintendent into the superintendent role. I think that he has demonstrated his ability, and I don't feel that we need to continue forward looking for an individual. I think what we have, we're lucky to have Mr. Rizzo on board. I think he's very capable of continuing forward. And what a very important aspect of all this is going to be is that when we start the school year in August, we already have all this in place and rolling. So that's where I'm at.
And I will second that, because my biggest concern would be a learning curve for the district. I feel that we are finally headed in the right direction under your leadership, Mr. Rizzo, and I would very much like to not waste anyone's time continuing on the path that we've been on when we have right here what it is that I believe we're looking for. What you've done for this district is pull people together from the board to administration, to your teachers and your faculty and your support staff, to the community members and the parents. I've heard so many wonderful things, and with that, I will support that. I also think that you have an investment here, and I think that that is very important for us because we crave in this district continuity. I think that you bring that to the table. For all of those reasons, I second that motion.
I'm, excuse me, I'm confused. I agree with everything as far as they've said about what an outstanding job. Oh, there's a motion.
Okay. Oh,
So we have a first and a second.
hold on. Oh,
Is this
Tom made a
part of the
motion and I
solicitor's
second the
report?
motion.
yeah.
So
Let
with
me-
that-
let me just interject. First of all, this is probably the most exciting solicitor's report in 10 years. This is thrilling.
That's true. We're a little out of order.
Unfortunately, I would ask the board for some caution here, only because under state law, we'd have to provide notice to the board for the election of a superintendent. That is,
My motion was, I didn't say we hire him. I said we move him in the process of moving him towards the superintendent of the district, moving him from interim. So yes, I understand and I totally agree. There's a process that has to occur. What I'm saying is that I'm making a motion to start that process and move him in that position.
I, on the other hand, got very excited when I heard the motion and just went right for it. So full disclosure.
You were correct.
No. So I just, this would be to move forward with the process, including development of an employment contract and notice of election for a subsequent meeting.
Correct. To start him in the process, the hiring process to move him into the superintendent role officially.
Okay, that is, we can distinguish that from the requirement of the code.
So we'll take the motion and the second and then ask for questions and comments.
Assuming you're good with that as how I described it, then we're good.
That's what I was trying, that's why I thought I was clear, but if I wasn't, that's fine. I was just saying I wanted.
That you can do.
Yes.
And then you'll have to take public comment on this as well.
Take public comment at this time?
It's your discretion as to when you
Well,
want to take
I
it.
guess I would like to continue with the board
You can certainly do that.
and ask for any questions or comments from the board first.
Okay, so that now is the appropriate time for a board comment. So, and I have to say, I agree that Mr. Rizzo has done an outstanding job. I'm a fan. However, I have to say this caught me completely off guard, completely. The last that I knew, this was the solicitor's report actually in the middle of usually if there is something like this, it comes during board comment at the end of the board meeting, not after the board and committee reports. The last I knew also, we were in the process of going through the procedure. We had contracted with the IU to look into interviewing, and we were looking at different superintendent candidates that we're in the beginning stages of a process that was going to probably take several months, all of this. So I think this is such a huge decision, and to kind of be hit with this at the middle of a board meeting catches me off guard. But I don't ever want it to look as if I have any doubt that Mr. Rizzo would be very, very capable, and I'm just kind of caught off guard. So I have to say I'm a little disappointed that my fellow board members have brought this at this time in the middle of a board meeting. So that's it.
Well, I think it can come up at any time. I understand. I mean, it can come up at any time. I think when I heard Mr. DeBello make that statement, it just really put words to a lot of how I've been feeling about this. And I do think that in the past several weeks, I know Mrs. Lease has reached out to us repeatedly about getting her feedback about the survey and things. And there wasn't a whole lot coming, to be quite honest, from the board in terms of developing that. And I guess I just question, why are we continuing to go down that rabbit hole of going with the IU and going through that when we have someone that stepped up during a crisis? If he can do that during a crisis, what can he do during normal, well, I don't want to call it that, but whatever times. So to hear those words just resonated with me, and that's why I immediately jumped in and second, I second to put him right there. Let's just revamp the whole procedure. So
I
that's
think
where
Mr. Rizzo has been doing a fabulous job also. I just think that there is a really positive part to doing this as a process. And I thought that the board also wanted to slow this all down. Possibly that was what I was hearing from right after the resignation, was there's no hurry, we shouldn't rush, we shouldn't be emotional about this. This should be a thoughtful process. And so I'm a little confused. I don't want this to be an emotional reaction, good or bad. I just think there should be a process to it. I think that's the whole point of a 9-person board.
I think that you can have a process that drags things out forever. I mean, if you've already got standing in front of you what you're looking for, what farther are you looking for? But, and I can understand there's, maybe a couple of steps you want to go through, but Mr. Rizzo has done this fantastic job. He's been so proactive in communicating with the community and the board and the staff. And it's like, how long do we want to drag this out? And does everybody have that much time on their hands that you want to waste, pounding money down a rat hole?
I have full confidence in Mr. Rizzo, and I love the things that he's been doing for our district and with the district and certainly in the community. I think I'm really concerned because what we haven't done as a board is we have not put together a definition of what that role is and what are the qualifications and what are the characteristics. We don't, so as much as I absolutely love Mr. Rizzo and what he's doing, I just think that we haven't really looked to say what are the needs and just make sure. I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. It doesn't mean that we need to necessarily go down a path where we look at 30 candidates, but I think we should do our jobs and put together some form of what is it? What are we looking for? What do we need? And how should we be doing this?
We don't know what we're looking for or what we need.
If I could just interject for one moment, we can do one. We have a motion, obviously, in a second. So there is a motion on the table. This I would just interject is certainly a qualified executive session topic. Since we were talking about a particular individual, there's nothing that prevents you from having this discussion publicly. I just want to note that should you want to have more candor on the issue.
There's a first and a second on the table.
Yes, and we just took some questions or comments from the board.
I'll just briefly, so I've been processing what everyone's saying, and the only thing I can add is that, yeah, you should measure twice before cutting, measure 3 times before cutting, but when you know, right? So Bob, I think you've done an outstanding job, and Tom, thank you for bringing it up, and I look forward to the vote.
So
oops.
Go ahead.
Bob, I think you've done an absolutely outstanding job given the circumstances of Dr. Gooden leaving and COVID and everything else. So it's all hit. I'm going to question one of the suggestions that we do take a look at the job requirements, the resume type thing very quickly, because if we want to make any changes to that, now is the time to do it so that Mr. Rizzo is aware of what the expectations are.
So the job requirements are defined by the state. I mean, I'm not sure what we could change as far as the role of a superintendent.
And you have a board approved job description as well.
Okay, that was just one question that I had.
The reason I brought this up is because I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm watching what's going on, and I've been down this road multiple times, and when I know, like Mr. Schaefer said, when you know, and I felt that I know. What I talked about previously was about slowing the process down. Was my recommendation was to not go down this road until we gave Mr. Rizzo the opportunity to perform in the duties before we actually open this up. That was my recommendation. And I tried to not move forward quickly. I just wanted us to pull back and just to see if I've seen what I want to see. I've interviewed superintendents. I've interviewed executive directors at the IU. I've seen what I need to see from Mr. Rizzo's capabilities, and that's why I made the motion.
And Mr. Rizzo, I apologize in this because I think you have done an outstanding job. However, I believe that based on previous conversations that have gotten up to this point, that this is a political stunt and you are a pawn in this. So I will.
Okay, so that's way out of bounds. This has nothing to do with politics. That's like.
We're not going down that.
Yeah,
we're not going. Okay, that means everybody, we're not going down that road. That is not what is happening here. Mr. Rizzo has stepped up during a very difficult time. We started a process that there is no need to continue down that process if we know we have what we want. I don't want to waste anyone's time at the IU. I don't feel that this board has been responsive to Mrs. Lisa's request for information. I mean, she came to me, how many times, Mrs. Lise? 3, 4 times that she had to come to me to say, hey, let's get something out. I asked Mrs. Lise to send out a reminder. I asked Mrs. Fern to send out a reminder because the information wasn't coming to impact that search. So if we're not, as a board, fully invested in wanting to do a search and contribute in a way that is productive to the IU to continue down that road, then is it because we have what we need? I think it is. I work very closely with Mr. Rizzo, probably more so than a lot of you here, just by the very nature of this position. And I do think we have what we need. I don't feel that there is a need to continue to waste anyone's time in the district or at the IU. I think that Mr. Rizzo has had an on-the-job interview, whether we went forward with things faster than Mr. DeBello had wanted to go. I definitely didn't want to leave the community hanging, and that's why I wanted him as acting superintendent. You all know I pushed for that. He's had that opportunity to excel even prior to being named acting super, and has continued to do that as acting superintendent. So right now, Mr. Fitzgerald, is it my position to go ahead and call for a vote, or do I need to take public comment first?
Well, you certainly have to take public comment.
Thank you. So with that, is there any public comment in the room or on the Zoom?
We have 2 hands raised at this time.
Go ahead.
Are we going?
Do we have those people to speak?
Michael, please state your full name and address and your public comment to be heard.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Michael Lebedzinski, 2005 Willowwood Drive, Royersford. I'm just sitting here laughing, finding it highly ironic that now some board members suddenly want to make decisions based on facts and data and historical and a regimented process, not an emotionally, irrationally exuberant response. Highly ironic given the events and emotionally driven decisions over the last 9 months. What you're hearing outside of the windows there is a collective clapping and resounding cheers of thousands of parents in the district. The IU is a corrupt, highly politically aligned organization. We know this from recent right to no request. Shame on you, Dr. Wright. You're shocked and surprised, and you project that surprise by blaming others. I look forward to your early resignation, and I'm very happy to hear the board vote to move Mr. Rizzo forward in the process.
Dan Mayo, please state your full name and address and your public comment to be heard. At this time, there are no further hands raised.
And with that, Mr. Fitzgerald, am I permitted to take a vote?
Could I make a comment or a question first?
Sure.
Because I wanted to make it clear, because I hadn't finished my thought yet. I am 100% in support of this. I was just trying to make a point to make sure, and I trust the board that we had all of our ducks in a row to do this. I think a great favor point for Bob Rizzo is that the students know him, the staff know him, administration knows him, we know him. So I think it's an excellent fit for Springford School District. I was not questioning anything except just to make sure, because just in case I missed something, that we just had our ducks in a row before we got to the vote. So thank you very much, Mr. Rizzo.
I support this from the perspective of, I love property, and Mr. Rizzo is right up there with property. So that is my official endorsement.
Can someone just repeat the motion to me before we vote? Because I didn't get it. I think I misheard it.
It's okay. We're just going to start down the road. So Mr. Fitzgerald, will you clarify the motion for us?
As I understand the motion, it's effectively authorizing my office to prepare an employment contract for review and consideration by Mr. Rizzo to be acted upon at a subsequent board meeting, and for the board then to take the necessary steps under the school code to elect Mr. Rizzo at a subsequent meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go with roll call at this point. Mrs. Fern, do you want to do that for us, please?
Mr. Schaefer,
Yes.
Dr. Wright,
No.
Mr. Jackson,
Yep.
Mr. DeBello,
Yes.
Mrs. Zazowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Melton,
Yes.
Mrs. Vizzini,
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mrs. Earl.
Yes.
Okay, that will start us down that road. And that motion does pass. And we are going then to move on to the rest of our agenda at this point.
We can cancel the meeting now. I'm good.
Okay, we'll just go all the way to the end. Oh, I have one little thing before we adjourn though, so we'll just wait. Minutes, A and B. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Personnel, A through S. Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Questions or comments?
Yes, on E, with the change of status, because you said A through S, correct? S, so E, change of status for Dr. Reinheimer to be from the assistant principal to the curriculum supervisor. I would just like to say that I'm very happy to hear that she's taking that role. I've worked with her, she's wonderful, and I like that we are promoting from within. So congratulations to us.
Great, okay. So A through S, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Finance, A through E. Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Programming and curriculum, A through U. This will include the learning model for the 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. New property, A through E. Is there a motion to approve
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Conferences and workshops, A through D. Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Questions or comments?
I have a
Yeah,
comment. Oh, go ahead.
Item A, and this is just to educate myself. What is planning, implementing book club using culturally responsive texts and strategies? What is that? It's only $75, but it's not the money aspect of it. I'm trying to understand what that really is or not.
So I'm going to speak, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Murray to correct me if I mess anything up. But the idea with culturally responsive text is a deep dive and more of an understanding into curriculum and teaching in a more culturally responsive way and a equity, diversity, and inclusive kind of a way. So it's more about working towards the culture and changing the resources that we use and how we go about getting there. Is that close, Dr. Murray? Thank you. I got a thumbs up.
And then I had a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Wright, you had a question.
Really, it's more of a comment on C. I want to thank Dr. Murray for giving an explanation about Title I funds being used for the professional development. I would just like to challenge the district to find ways in which to use the Title I funds, professional development, for teacher opportunities for conferences and things. We've really gotten away from some of that, and I know it's very hard right now. So much of it, things are virtual, but to look to our teachers also to see that we can provide them as many opportunities as possible.
You got it.
I wanted to comment on C too, because I think you brought this up at the work session about the number of people that were going. And Mr. Rizzo, I think you were originally on that list. Are you not on that list at this point?
That is correct.
Okay, so the others will come back and share that wealth of information that they'll gain there with you.
Correct.
All right, so we had a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Other business, we have A and we have B, 1 through 12. Is there a motion for both A and B?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. C is really just the policies that Mrs. Earl mentioned earlier that are on for a first read. So please take a look at those under new other business. And then board comment. I have a board comment. So I was looking at the calendar going forward, and we had originally, if you think back pre-COVID, we had our work sessions on the third Monday of the month and our board meetings on the fourth Monday of the month. And when COVID hit, we needed to have a more regular touch on what was happening in the district. So rather than continuing to add to our meetings and juggle committee meetings around, we went to the second and fourth. With the return to something more of a normal platform for the next school year, I propose that we go back to the third and fourth Mondays. It was never meant to be a permanent situation at the second and fourth, and it has presented some obstacles in terms of things being added to the agenda after the work session without having much of an opportunity to have discussion and review those. So I propose that we go back beginning in August to the third and fourth Mondays, if the rest of the board can be in agreement with that. What is the direction of the board there?
I agree.
Everybody okay with that?
I
Okay, so
keep
we
it
have
all
plenty
in
of time.
pencil because I keep re-racing. When we change it, just
Oh,
let
not
me
done
know.
yet, Not done yet. So Mrs. Fern, there's plenty of time to advertise. And we had talked about this when we moved them before, that this wasn't a permanent situation. So we'll go back in August then. We don't need a vote for that right now. Okay. So we'll do that. I would also like to ask if we could, if there would be any agreement to move our last board meeting on June 28th to June 21st. There is a selfish reason for that, but also Mr. Rizzo has promised a summer for the board and for his team members. So I would like to ask if there's no objection to move the board meeting on June 28th to June 21st. There is a policy meeting that night, which can easily be moved, as I understand, to June 7th, and extracurricular would like to take a break that month anyway.
Yeah, I've already discussed with the policy committee and Mr. Rizzo that we can move to the 7th. Everybody's good with that.
So if everybody's okay with that, we can have that advertised also. It's just a change in the meeting schedule. Are we okay?
Nothing to do with policy. I mean,
Doesn't touch property, not a
okay,
thing.
I'm good.
Excuse me, Mrs. Zazowski, with the board meeting the work session going back to the third Monday, when will extracurricular and policy now take place?
They'll bounce to the other Monday. They're just going to swap with
Okay.
the second and third Mondays of the month will swap.
Okay, very good.
Okay, that's all I have. Is there any other board comment this evening? And public to be heard. Anyone in the room? Rich, anyone on the Zoom? Okay.
Dan Mayo, please state your full name and your public comment to be heard.
Dan Mayo, 155 Wentworth Circle in Limerick, Pennsylvania. I wanted to, sorry I got disconnected earlier, but I did want to comment that I think it's a tremendous move to move Mr. Rizzo forward. It was said earlier that you know what you have when it's standing right in front of you. The 8-1 vote sort of demonstrates that almost everybody on the board recognizes it is a right thing to do. So I want to commend Tom for bringing it forward and Colleen for seconding that motion and 8 of the board members for approving it.
Thank you. Michael Lebedinsky, please state your full name and address and your public comment to be heard.
Michael Lebedinsky, 2005 Willowwood Drive, Royersford. I'm just curious where the board stands on discussion around making masks optional for student athletes. We know from looking at the Pennsylvania State Universal Masking Order that masks are not required for student athletes while competing or training. We know from looking at the PIAA's website that they provide exactly the same guidance. We know that the Eagles and the Steelers in the state of Pennsylvania do not wear masks when they're competing or practicing. And finally, more locally, there are several school districts. Central Bucks School District is one. In March, their board voted to update their health and safety plan to remove the mask requirement for student athletes while competing or training. Hopefully, Springford in its position as leading in this area in terms of getting things back to normal can move that discussion forward soon. Thank you.
There were no more hands raised at this time.
All right, thank you all for your hard work and your comments and contributions this evening. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second? Meeting adjourned.